Tonight, I'm sharing 3 scary stories straight out of Texas that will make you rethink how safe your home really is. These aren't far-fetched tales. They're the kind of things that could happen to anyone on any ordinary night. As you listen, think about this. Could something like this happen in your town? Maybe even on your street? In your own house? Let me know what you think and where you're from in the comments, if you dare. It was a quiet Tuesday evening in my small Texas home, just outside of Austin. I live alone in a modest 1-story house with a wraparound porch. The neighborhood is peaceful, mostly older folks who keep to themselves. My evenings are simple: finish work, heat up dinner, watch a game, and head to bed. That night, though, my routine was interrupted in a way I'll never forget. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when I heard it, a faint knock at the front door. It was soft, almost timid, like someone didn't want to disturb me. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 9:17 p.m. No one should have been at my door that late. At first, I thought it might be a package delivery. Sometimes couriers drop things off late, but a glance through the living room window showed no delivery van in sight. I got up and walked to the door. The knocking came again. 3 steady taps. It wasn't frantic, but it wasn't hesitant either. Just odd. I peeked through the peephole, but no one was there. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. No response. I flicked on the porch light and opened the door a crack, just enough to peek out. The porch was empty. I stepped outside and looked around. The streetlights barely illuminated the road, and the dark yards of my neighbors looked lifeless. Shrugging it off as a prank, I went back inside and locked the door. About 20 minutes later, it happened again. This time, the knock was louder. 4 deliberate knocks that echoed through the house. My heart jumped. I tiptoed to the door and peered through the peephole again. Nothing. This time, though, I wasn't taking any chances. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the door and unlocked it, swinging it open with one swift motion. My porch was still empty, but something caught my eye. A single muddy footprint on the doormat. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I turned and looked at the street again. Still empty. The chill of unease settled deep into my bones as I stepped back inside and bolted the door. I tried to distract myself with the TV, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My house has big windows, and even with the curtains drawn, I felt exposed. I double-checked all the locks and turned off the lights, hoping to make it look like I wasn't home. That's when I heard it. Scratching. Faint, almost imperceptible, but definitely coming from the back door. My kitchen door leads to a small fenced yard, and there's no way anyone could get back there without jumping the fence. I grabbed the bat again and crept toward the kitchen, my pulse pounding in my ears. The scratching stopped as soon as I got close. I held my breath and looked through the blinds. My yard was empty. But then I saw it, a shadow moving just out of the light's reach. It wasn't big enough to be an animal. It looked like a person, hunched over, shuffling along the fence line. "Who's there?" I yelled, my voice cracking. No answer. The shadow disappeared, and I couldn't tell if it had climbed over the fence or melted into the darkness. I called the police, feeling like an idiot, but they assured me they'd send someone to patrol the area. While I waited, I sat in the living room with all the lights on, clutching the bat. That's when I noticed it, a handprint on the outside of my living room window. A smudged, greasy handprint, right at eye level. My stomach turned. I didn't hear footsteps or see anyone, but somehow they'd been close. Too close. The cops arrived shortly after, but they didn't find anything. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. They said it was probably kids pulling a prank, but they didn't see the handprint. They didn't feel the weight of those knocks. For weeks, I couldn't sleep without checking every lock and window 3 times. Even now, months later, I keep a bat by my bed. I still don't know who or what was out there that night, but I know one thing. It wasn't just my imagination. Something, or someone, was watching me, and they wanted me to know it. It started on a humid Friday night in July. I'd been working late all week and was looking forward to a quiet evening at home. My house sits at the edge of a small neighborhood in Texas, bordering a patch of woods. I always loved the peace of it, until that night. I had just finished dinner and was cleaning up the kitchen when I heard something strange. It wasn't loud, but it was distinct. A soft creak, like someone shifting their weight on the wooden floors of my hallway. I froze, my hands still wet from the dishes. My first thought was that it was just the house settling. Older homes make noises, especially at night, but as I stood there, straining to listen, I heard it again. A slow, deliberate creak. I grabbed a towel, dried my hands, and stepped out of the kitchen. My hallway was dark, the only light spilling out from the living room behind me. I flipped the hallway switch, and the light flickered before staying on. The hall was empty. I told myself it was nothing, but the feeling of being watched crept over me like a shadow. Shaking it off, I headed back to the kitchen, turning the TV on for some background noise. That's when I heard it again. This time louder. A distinct thud, like something heavy dropping onto the floor. My heart started racing. The sound had come from my bedroom. I grabbed a flashlight from the drawer, even though the power was working fine. Somehow, the thought of using a flashlight felt safer. As I made my way down the hallway, every step seemed to echo, even though I was walking as quietly as I could. I reached my bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. It hadn't been before. I was sure of it. I nudged the door open with the flashlight and swept the beam around the room. Nothing seemed out of place at first. The bed was neatly made, the closet door closed, and the window locked. But when I turned to leave, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. There were muddy footprints on the floor. They led from the window to the bed, then back toward the hallway. My breath caught in my throat as I crouched to get a better look. The prints were fresh, still wet, and larger than my own. I backed out of the room, my heart pounding like a drum. I locked myself in the bathroom and called 911, whispering into the phone as I explained what I'd found. The operator assured me that officers were on their way and told me to stay put. As I waited, I heard it again, that creak in the hallway. Only this time, it was closer. Right outside the bathroom door. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaking. "Whoever you are, I've called the cops. They'll be here any minute." Silence. I pressed my ear against the door, trying to listen. That's when I heard the slow, rhythmic breathing. It wasn't mine. It was coming from the other side of the door. I backed away, my hand shaking as I clutched the flashlight like a weapon. The doorknob rattled softly as if someone was testing it. My knees nearly buckled. "Go away!" I shouted, hoping to scare them off. The rattling stopped. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of my own panicked breathing. Then I heard footsteps retreating down the hall, slow and deliberate. The front door creaked open and slammed shut. When the police arrived a few minutes later, they searched the house and found no one. The muddy footprints had dried by then, but they were still visible. They led from the window in my bedroom to the hallway and out the front door. The officers said the window lock had been tampered with, but they couldn't find any fingerprints. They suggested it might have been a burglar, but nothing was missing. My wallet, phone, and other valuables were untouched. Whoever had been in my house hadn't come to steal. They'd just been there. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined that breathing outside my door. I installed new locks and even got a security system, but it didn't make me feel safer. Not really. Every so often, I think about that night. I think about the footprints, the creaking floor, the soft rattle of the doorknob, and I wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't locked myself in the bathroom? Would they have just walked away? Or were they waiting for me to open the door? It was a quiet Sunday evening in my small Texas town. I'd spent the day running errands and was finally settling in for the night. My house sits on a long stretch of road with only a few neighbors, and the nearest house is about a quarter mile away. I've always liked the privacy, but that night, I wished I lived closer to someone. I was sitting in my living room, the faint hum of the TV filling the otherwise silent house. The sun had just set, and the only light came from the lamp beside me. I was scrolling through my phone when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. A figure standing in the yard. At first, I thought I was imagining things. I turned my head slowly, and my stomach dropped. A man was standing in the shadows near the edge of my property, just barely visible in the faint glow of the porch light. He wasn't moving, just standing there, facing the house. I tried to tell myself it was just a neighbor or maybe someone lost, but something about the way he stood, so still, so deliberate, made my skin crawl. I got up, locked the front door, and closed the curtains. My hands were shaking. I waited for a while, standing in the hallway where I couldn't be seen from any windows. After what felt like an eternity, I peeked through a crack in the curtains. The man was gone. I felt a wave of relief, thinking maybe he'd just been passing by. But that relief didn't last long. About an hour later, I was in the kitchen making tea when I heard it. A soft tapping sound, like fingers drumming against glass. I froze, the kettle still in my hand. The sound was coming from the window behind me. Slowly, I turned around. My heart felt like it stopped. The same man was standing outside the kitchen window, his face partially obscured by the shadows. But I could see enough: sunken eyes, pale skin, and a grin that sent shivers down my spine. He was tapping on the glass with one finger, his head tilted slightly, as if he was amused by my fear. I backed away, fumbling for my phone. As I dialed 911, the tapping stopped. When I looked up, he was gone again. The operator assured me that officers were on their way, but every second felt like an hour. I stayed on the line, walking from room to room, checking the locks on every door and window. That's when I heard it, the back door handle jiggling. I nearly dropped the phone. The operator asked what was happening, and I whispered, "He's trying to get in." I grabbed a knife from the kitchen drawer and pressed myself against the wall, trying to stay out of sight. The jiggling stopped, and for a moment, everything was silent. Then, a loud bang echoed through the house. He was trying to kick the door in. The operator stayed on the line, telling me to stay calm and find a place to hide. I ran to my bedroom, locked the door, and pushed the dresser in front of it. My hands were trembling so badly, I could barely hold the knife. The banging stopped, and I heard footsteps moving around the house. He was checking every door, every window, looking for a way in. The sound of his boots on the wooden porch sent chills down my spine. Then, I heard a new sound, scratching. It was coming from the bedroom window. I didn't have the courage to look, but I could hear it, his nails scraping against the glass, slow and deliberate. I stayed frozen, clutching the knife, until I heard the sound of sirens in the distance. The scratching stopped, and the footsteps retreated. By the time the police arrived, the man was gone. They searched the property and found footprints in the yard, leading from the front porch to the windows and back door. They told me he was likely a transient or someone looking for an easy target, but nothing about the way he acted felt random. For weeks after, I couldn't sleep. Every little noise made me jump, I installed security cameras, floodlights, and even got a dog, but I still don't feel safe. Sometimes, late at night, I think I hear that tapping on the window again, and I wonder, what would have happened if the police hadn't shown up? What did he want? I'll never know, and maybe that's the scariest part, because sometimes it's not what they do, it's the not knowing that stays with you.